You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, and Henry the FLOWMASTER Schwartz from CBOE. The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. When it comes to trading volatility, trust CBOE, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. CBOE's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for a little program we like to call around these parts, the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever-scintillating, at least we tend to think so, and you know what, we're not biased at all, Options Insider Radio Network. Remember, if you want to join the fun, join the party out there, only one place to go. theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. People are always hitting us up all the time. How do we put our name in the hat? How do we enter to win all the stuff you guys are giving away? That's where you go. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The pro trading crates are for our pro members. It's right there in the title. Just a little extra bit of fun. Because they are no small amount of effort and expense for us to put those together. So yes, those are for our pro members. We do other giveaways for everybody else, but for the pro members, they get a little bit of something special because we like you folks out there at the end of the day. We want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to all of our fun pro stuff, which of course, there's a heck of a lot of it now. 200 plus episodes waiting for you on that feed the second you hit that join button. So strap in, get ready. You got some options content coming your way. Let's see what else is coming our way on the old show today. Let's go around the horn, see who's joining us. We will be joined. It is Thursday, so it is FLOWMASTER Day, but unfortunately he is delayed on the various transit systems that bedevil the Northeast there. So he's stuck on a train somewhere. He'll be joining us probably about quarter after or so. So look forward to a little bit of FLOWMASTER a little bit later than usual, but we are joined nonetheless by our usual stalwart compatriots in all things options crime. First, let's go out to the guy who's just blowing up the tubes. He is Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, how does it feel to be the next hot viral sensation, sir?
Well, I got to say that it's something to where I'm on the option block, so you can't really top that. But it's always good to have some people watching your YouTube videos. Didn't know that selling a call spread over a covered, or as an alternative to a covered call, would be that popular. But by gosh, the people on YouTube loved it.
That's the height of sexy, if I do say so myself. I think we can look forward to a lot more covered call videos coming from St. Charles Wealth in the near future. Is that the case, sir?
Absolutely. I'm inspired to get back on the YouTube train.
There we go. Give the algorithm what it wants at the end of the day. The machines are already our overlords. We don't even know it here. Everyone's talking about the AI revolution. It's already here, listeners. All right. And let's keep on rolling to a place where there is no AI because there is no machinery. It's the shores of Maine, the place where technology goes to die. But one thing lives there, one thing only. It is the rock lobster himself, sitting atop his tower, watching like a beacon over the shores of Maine, waiting for the clam pirates to return. Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the show. How goes your lone vigil on the shores of Maine, sir? Oh no, I think the technology gods have smote him down already. Mr. Rock Lobster, are you there?
I know. I was just yakking into my mute button. I have to send a trade alert out to my students here. You know what? The sun is finally shining. It was dark and stormy for days and days, and now it's a lovely day, and I feel that we're going to be clam pirated soon here.
Clam pirated indeed. As we keep on rolling, it is time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. By the way, I neglected to mention at the top of the show, if I still sound a little bit different, because I'm coming to you from the southern studio. We'll be down here for another couple of weeks or so down here. So getting out of a little bit of Chi-Town, good thing, actually, because, we gave the FLOWMASTER a hard time a week or two ago about being the worst air quality on the planet. Well, Chicago said, hey, hold my beer. It looks pretty dark and grimy and just terrible over there. The worst air quality on the planet. That crown now going to Chicago over the last couple of days. So glad to be out of Dodge for that. The smoke hasn't quite made it all the way down to the southern studio, but we shall see. The week is young. The market kind of looking a little bit interesting today. Earlier in the session, it seemed like everything was right with the world. We were going to be threatening. Let's see. Did we pop north of it? We got close to it. We kissed the 4,400 level. Couldn't quite break it, listeners. Still up today in the S&P, up about 1/3%. The Dow up about 2/3%. NASDAQ off slightly, a little over 1/10% on the day. So does seem like we are retreating a bit off the highs of the day. It's a little too early to say, oh, the worm is turning. We are dropping back down, but we shall see. The session is young. As we are talking right now, listeners, we are seeing VIX hanging out at a 13 handle, 1360 to be precise when we kicked off the show, down about 2/3 point. So not quite in that 12 handle range. But then again, let's wait until vol views. I do believe my prognostication is about almost exactly a point lower than this for tomorrow on vol views. We shall see if that comes to pass. We are heading into what is effectively a shortened holiday weekend, or shortened holiday week, I should say. We do have the weird July 4th holiday coming midweek next week, so a little bit of a weird one. So that's effectively a holiday week that we're going into next week. So they usually tend to come for vol. Let's see if that's the case tomorrow. VVIX, they're coming for the VVIX, that's for sure. 85, down 11 points from where it was this time on Monday's show. VXX 25, down about almost a full point, about 0.9 point from last year. I saw I think it was our buddy Jim Carroll's been on vol views many times, tweeting about how VXX out of the money puts when the weeklies have just been cashing every week, week after week. And, looking at these numbers, it's kind of hard to argue with that. Maybe VXX is back on the menu. UVXY 1880, down over a point, about 1.1 points from Monday's show. SVIX continuing to move north, 27 3/4, up nearly a full point about 9/10 of a point from where it was this time last show. UVIX 4.5, down about half a point. And VolQ 1830, literally unched. So the one unched name on our list today. So an intriguing one. Let's start with the guy. I would be normally think he's safe because he's under the weather shield in St. Charles, but he's in the mobile studio today. So who knows? Uncle Mike could be beset by the smog and the smoke monster out there. Uncle Mike, how is the weather in your neck of the woods? Can you see where you're driving? And then B, what's catching your eye in today's kind of mixed market, sir?
Yeah, it's not pretty. We need the smoke to clear. I'm getting tired of this, so I need to get back under the weather shield, if you will, because this is not pleasant to look at every day, and feel bad for making fun of the FLOWMASTER a few weeks ago, because this is not nice. But yeah, with markets right now, I think that I'm not predicting, or I am predicting minimal movement over the course of the rest of the day today and tomorrow, just with the holiday week coming up. This is typically very low volume, and when you do get a lot of movement, if we do get a lot of movement, the Viceroy would always say that if it's low volume, it doesn't count. And so, of course, it counts for if you're making money or losing money. But I would say that a lot of the big players are off to the Hamptons, or at least on their way there right now. So not taking a lot of stock in, I mean, obviously I'm managing risk and that type of thing, of course, but what's happening over the next couple of days, I don't think is going to be indicative of what's happening over the next couple of weeks. It's the main number, and I'm referring to next week after the 4th is over. 44.48 is the recent high and the high of the year for the S&P 500. We're still roughly 50 points away from that right now. So I think we have a top in place for the time being. But if we do break that, it could be a lot more upside, because we really kind of went down a 45-degree angle looking at a chart back in 2022. In terms of bonds, we're pulling back a little bit in the bond world today with a little bit of selling going on. But once again, I think this is just pre-holiday nonsense, if you will, on either side of it. And I'd say that if we were up, down, or sideways, that's all nonsense right before a holiday typically. No one wants to trade today. They want to be out in their boats or something like that. But I think we're going to have low volume, and we'll see if we get an explosion after the 4th. Pun intended.
Look at you, punster, alive and well, even though you're outside of the protection of the weather shield. Gotta get back there, Uncle Mike. That smoke and haze not looking good for the health over there in Chi-Town. Let's go out to the shores of Maine, where, you know, there's many problems on the shores of Maine. There's the clam piracy. There's the dark and oppressive nature of the area, you know, all those issues, no technology. One thing they don't have, at least right now, which is kind of strange because they are pretty much Canada adjacent. So he could probably see the wildfires from the tippy top of his tower there, but doesn't seem like he's beset by the smoke and the fog. No, that's all down in our way and in the FLOWMASTER's way. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, are you enjoying the fact that you could see the fires from your house, but you're not getting the smoke, sir? And then B, what else is catching your eye out there in the markets today, sir?
Well, I don't know if I'm necessarily reveling in the fact that everybody's getting this nasty smoke. Yeah, we're, you know, we've had such strong storms here. I guess it must be pushing the smoke somewhere else. So anyway, but I'm noticing some interesting things. You know, we've got a low for vol. VIX is, you know, mid 13s. I think they probably got a little aggressive taking the option prices down earlier in the week because we have like we have a half day Monday, and then we have and then a day off on Tuesday for the holiday. So we've got kind of that thing going on. So you have a lot of weekend effect, but they took option prices down pretty substantially. So Mark and I were looking at it today, like you could buy the July 07 440 call, 436 put for under $4. So you can basically buy a 1% move for less than 1% for 5 full trading days. nothing's guaranteed, but I can't see how you don't win doing that as a short-term trade. Especially talking about getting back to our recent highs if, we kind of get this end of the quarter markup, which I feel like, and I think that's kind of why there's a bid for the options right now. I don't feel like the bid's because people want to buy puts. I think there's the bid because people are afraid of missing out on the upside. So that's kind of what my nose feels like trading wise. And I will say there was a surprise. I thought MU had some kind of good report this morning, but the stock is down a bunch. So that's a little surprising on that end, especially, chips and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's kind of, where I see things right now. I don't see a lot of action. I am surprised. I'm starting to compile a list of lows on the year, and I'm finding some interesting. A lot of minerals, a lot of metals, a lot of natural gas, a lot of drug stocks. So, clearly the market has picked winners, with big tech, no question. But I had to guess that at some point these companies would start to perform a little bit. So. Anyway, and that's kind of where things are on what I would say is going to be kind of a slow, low volume day today.
Let's see where our final compatriot is. I do believe he has finally joined us. Better late than never. Mr. FLOWMASTER, a.k.a. Mr. Henry Schwartz from CBOE. Welcome back to the program. Fashionably late as usual, sir.
Well, thank you, Mark, and good to hear everybody. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I had to go get balloons for a coworker's birthday, and I took them on the subway, and it was a little slower than expected. And then this is a true story that just happened 5 minutes ago. Coming up the escalator with a bouquet of helium balloons, one of them popped, and the lady behind me screamed.
She thought there was gunfire in the building.
I'm pretty sure that's what went through her head. So it was really funny. It was a good experience. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. I agree with Andrew. It's quiet out there. Vol is low. Lots of high-profile new highs, and but there are some new lows. You know what? I'll actually see if I can run that 52-week low with the symbol and the sector and maybe the average daily option volume and send it out to you guys to distribute to your masses of followers.
Oh,
but
that'd be cool.
I'll tell you one thing that's interesting is the vol is very low. It doesn't necessarily mean it's cheap. However, we are heading into the holiday week, which is obviously going to be quiet, most likely. But I had a friend looking at some of the 0-day pricing, the 0-day SPX, and 2 days ago he said, "Wow, that straddle's only $21 at the opening, so around 9:35 in the morning." And we both kind of like, yeah, that does seem to be cheap. And it inspired me to basically go and write a query to pull out, just give me the 9:35 a.m. straddle daily and the net terminal value, basically. And that straddle, we ran up about 49 handles that day. I think this was on Tuesday. So it's an interesting way to think about it, right? Where you get a little bit away from vol and skew and just say, you know what, for these super short-term options, let's just talk about prices because, some of the math starts to break apart anyway. So that's kind of what's on the top of my mind.
What was the results of that survey? How many days paid off on that straddle, sir?
Well, when I ran the long-term history, it was kind of, not surprisingly, it was about 50-50 in terms of where things had been pricing in the past. But there's clusters, right? There's a period of months where it's profitable to be a seller, and then there's a period where it's profitable to be a buyer. And, I think that kind of, comes together with, we know how pricing behaves, right? The market reacts. It does its best to predict, but in a lot of ways, we're just reacting to, okay, well, this was too cheap yesterday, so I better raise the price today. And with these these 0-day options, you get the ability to just start it again every day. So I'll send it out. I get the feeling we're kind of back into a period where it's kind of better to be on the long side of these things. At least it has been recently. But it's ripe for study, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's the kind of data our listeners love. Hardcore analysis at the end of the day. And you're right, these kind of zero-day stuff, a lot of the things we traditionally talk about with options kind of goes out the window. Is it going to make it or not? That's why I always only half jokingly refer to these as kind of semi-binaries. It's a similar analysis at the end of the day. You're going to be there by this time or not. That's kind of the math you need to do with a lot of these new short duration products out there. Speaking of products, let's go out there and just see what else we're seeing out there. Like we said, it's kind of a lazy end to the week. We're heading into what will be a truncated holiday week, so we're not expecting a rock'em sock'em robots kind of day. And so far, at least, it kind of depends where you look, actually, what kind of day you're having, as is usually the case out there today. If you're coming to the vol market looking for a whole bunch of rock'em sock'em robots banger action, well, then you came to the wrong place, listeners. VIX is kind of hanging out, like we said, and VIX options are just twiddling their thumbs. 239,000 contracts on the tape right now in VIX land. That compares to an ADV of right around 819,000 contracts. So does not seem like we are on pace to hit that. Again, anything could happen. We could see some crazy spreads go up later in the session that gets us to that number, but doesn't seem like we're threatening that number in VIX land. But now we turn to the broad indexes, and it's a little bit of a different story. SPY, 4.75 million, so already well past halfway. Its ADV is right around 8.4 million contracts. So SPY is one of these products, it just takes maybe a little gust of smoke in Chicago to drive some paper, whatever the case may be. A SPY doesn't need much to set and hit its number, and it seems like it's on pace to exceed it yet again. The S, same deal, right around 1.35 million contracts on the tape right now. So a little bit lighter than it might normally be. Might normally be at about 1.6 million right now, but still respectable. It's closing in on halfway to that ADV, which is a little bit north of 2.8, right around 2.9 million contracts out there. So the S has a chance of making its number today. Small caps, we didn't talk about them at the top of the show. Small caps, Russell 2000 up 1.3% today. So just a banger day for small caps, and also reflected in the options volume. 707,000 contracts on the tape already for IWM. The ADV 1.05 million out there. If you want to talk some more about small caps, tune into TWIFO a little bit later today. Let's see if small caps make the list today, if they make the movers and shakers report. Only one way to find out. You got to tune in to TWIFO a little bit later on today. Or, of course, if you're listening on demand, as I know many of you are, then just hit next on your podcast device of choice. Let's go to the Qs, NASDAQ land, 1.7 million contracts. The ADV right around 3.4. So the Qs pretty much hanging out right at 50%. So again, kind of an intriguing day, depends where you're looking, but vol definitely the laggard today, bringing up the rear. Nobody's coming to play in the vol space today. I guess apparently they're all going out into crypto-related names, because that gets us to the first of our top 10 names today. By the way, it only cost you 210,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. But if you look at some of these names in the top 10, you might be forgiven for thinking, wait a minute, did someone give me a report from July of 2021? What's going on out here today? Because number 10, you got Mara. Mara back on the list today. Of course, crypto kind of been on the rampage of late, and Marathon, a name a lot of you like to play out there when you're not slinging Bitto or other names out there. Marathon 1335, up about 20 cents today. Of course, again, good for 210,000 contracts, and the number 10 overall spot today. Number 9, another name that was kind of hot out there and was also looking pretty terrible in the contagion days of March, but has lately been on the rampage and putting up some numbers, been making appearances in our top 10 quite a bit out here. This is SOFI, 8.75 right now, off about 15 cents today. So giving up a little bit. Of course, over the past year, this thing has rallied about $3.20. It was trading $5.41 back in July of last year. And of course, we all know how low it got just recently, about 4.75. That was back in May. So the low didn't even come in March. The low came in May for SOFI. And before that, I got down to about 4.25 back in December of last year. So this one's kind of had a rough year, but looking a wee bit better now. Of course, if we go dialing it back to the crazy heady days of 2021, the high out there was about 25.25 or so back in January of 2021. So wee bit of a ways to go from that, but also about doubling from its lows out there. So intriguing stuff for SOFI number 9, 211,000 contracts. Number 8, name we have not talked about in ages out here. This is Virgin Galactic. Looks like taking a whooping today. I do believe they are on the earnings front this week. Off about 60 cents, trading $4.16 right now. So they are just coming for Virgin Galactic. Not quite back to its 52-week low of $2.98, but if this keeps up, it won't be that far away from it. Good for today. Number 8, 237,000 contracts. Again, this is just a weirdo top 10 today. Also reflective of a kind of a weird holiday week, listeners. Number 7, keeping that 2021 theme alive. We've got the King of the Apes coming in at number 7. It's AMC, $4.32, off about a dime today. Good for 353,000 contracts. So the first 4 names of our top 10 today, you'd be forgiven for thinking we were back in the heady go-go days of 2021. Number 6 now. Now we're starting to get some of our usual suspects out here, but maybe coming in spots you don't expect them. Like number 6, Amazon. When was the last time we saw Amazon down there at number 6, putting up 369,000 contracts. 128.10 off about a buck out there, 0.75%. Let's go for number 5. We've got AMD. AMD, one of our friends in the chip zone there, 111.25, up about $1.10 today, or about 1%. Good for 393,000 contracts on the tape. And right above it, we have number 4, Micron. Haven't seen them on the top 10 in a while. 429,000 contracts. The Rock Lobsters is talking about them. They're popping off today as well. Not looking good. 270 to the dark side, off about 4%, trading about 64.33 right now. So they have come for it a bit. It was trading right around $68 earlier this morning. So they are coming for it. They had an analyst upgrade after their earnings results, but the stock still got annihilated. It's one of those. Looks like they have some issues maybe with China. So good earnings, an analyst upgrade, and the stock is down. So it's one of those. Listen, I'll have to dig in to see what's going on behind the scenes there. But number 4, Micron, 429,000. Number 3, it's the other half of the chip zone. It is NVIDIA. 409.5, off about $1.65. So kind of a rounding error day for NVIDIA. Good for about 500,000 contracts on the tape today. Number 2, you know what it is. It's the fruit company. It's Apple, 189.5. So looks like they set a new all-time high again this morning of 190.07. So this thing is just continuing to get bigger and loftier. 614,000 contracts on the tape for Apple today. So not the sleepiest day we've seen, but not the most action-packed either. And number 1, you know what it is. It's Tesla, 256.5, up about 30 cents today, or about 0.1%. Good for 1.36 million contracts on the tape. Looking on the earnings front, we do have some names popping off this week. As I mentioned, Micron, they were popping off yesterday, along with General Mills. Haven't seen those names on the radar lately, but popping off this week. Today we have Rite Aid and Nike. We had Carnival on Monday. We had my favorite ticker, Walgreens Boots Alliance, on Tuesday. So still have some names popping off. And then we will be getting back into the heart of earnings season again, not too far into the future. Let's look at Micron here really quickly. We have the earnings move results for this one. And let's see, they were popping off yesterday after the bell. They went into their announcement $67.07. They were pricing in 6.2%. They delivered, as of the time of this report, only about 4%. I do believe we have moved more since then. Let's see really quickly. Yeah, actually it's still about 4%. So we're kind of hanging out still we're hanging out at exactly that same level right now. So kind of interesting. So actually, in spite of all this weirdness with the earnings, it looks like they have actually underperformed their announcement, at least from a straddle perspective. So intriguing stuff. You want to see that data for yourself. Oh, let's go to Nike really quickly. They are coming up today after the bell. They're at 113 even when we ran these numbers. They're pricing in $7.50. In the past, they moved $8.70. Wow, they're pricing in a heck of a lot less juice out there in Nike land. Interesting. Is that merited? I guess we will find out a little bit after the bell, listeners. Of course, the season hanging out at 93% last cycle. So coming in a little bit under expectations. Will this next cycle, this one finally be the cycle that kind of is the apocalyptic cycle that everyone's been predicting since the start of the year? Will we get another kind of shrug your shoulders cycle? I guess we'll find out. You got to stay tuned to the numbers coming in a few weeks out here, listeners. As we keep on rolling, speaking of numbers and weirdness, it's time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get weird, let's get wild, let's get whimsical. Before we do that, Mr. Flowmaster, sir, are you enjoying the old schadenfreude that is you getting to turn the tables on us now and laugh at Chicago for having the worst air quality in the world, sir?
I'm just a little bit sad for the whole country. I mean, it's kind of a bummer. It keeps happening. And the travel issues, which I don't really know if it had much to do with the smoke situation or not, but we had one SIBO guy had to sleep in the airport yesterday. Another guy that was just from Chicago to New York had his flight canceled, and they said, if you want to leave before Sunday, you got to drive home. So he's driving home. All planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yeah, I know a few people who had a lot of flights into Chicago getting canceled and rerouted these days. So they are not alone, sir.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I want things to blow over and fires to go out and everybody have a nice summer. But there were a couple names I saw today. You know, usually I like to bring up like these bizarro names that we've never heard of, like Muffig or Finger. Today it's Apple. You can't ignore the fact that this stock is a beast, and the first few trades out of the gate this morning were totaled almost 30,000 upside call buyers in the 192 strike, the 197 strike, and the 195 strike. Basically, some expire tomorrow, some expire a week from tomorrow, and some expire 2 weeks from tomorrow. But these are decent trades, decent sized trades. And I remember watching the screens when Apple crossed the $1 trillion mark, and now we're right around $3 trillion.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that long ago they became the first $1 trillion company, does it? And now you're right; it's just insane. Yes,
1, 3. What's the difference? But it's worth watching. I mean, it's a stock that I don't own any. I had my partner in Trade Alert owned that was a big Apple fan and did really well. Basically overweighting himself in Apple, but it gets so much press and everybody's so familiar with it that I think this $200 point is there's going to be a lot of people paying attention. So I don't know how long it stays up there, if it just leads the technology industry for all eternity, but it's a decent trade, decent couple of trades hitting. So that one I noticed because it was right out of the gate. So then the other one was...
Wait, before you get to those, let's break down what we saw. You saw a bunch of the 192 halves going out tomorrow. These are all very near-dated trades, sir. Regale us with what you saw.
I mean, so the biggest one, actually the first one was a buyer of 10,000 of the July 14th 197 half calls. They paid 27 cents. So they're cheap, but when you buy 10,000 of them, it really starts to add up. You're talking about $270,000 in premium. A minute or two later, we saw almost 20,000 of those one day. So they expired June 30th, tomorrow. The 192 half calls, and that buyer paid 14 cents. And these all look opening to me. And then the other one that we saw was almost 10,000 of the July 7th 195 calls. Those they paid 24 cents for. My guess is it's probably all the same buyer. Basically spreading themselves out just because the sizes and the premium levels are about the same. So, Apple's obviously, it's often the most active. It's got massive, average daily volume, of over 1 million contracts. But we don't see a lot of 10 and 20,000 lot prints in there. It's a heavy retail name. So those really do stand out. I would bet you, I'm just looking, there's a few other trades in the past 2 weeks that are in the 10,000 contract range, but that's pretty unusual in there. So that's a big one.
Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, are you seeing a lot of Apple love with your crazies over there in the land of the pit? And what do you think about these? Including, we got almost 20,000 of the 192 halves to go out tomorrow, going up for 15 or 14 cents, but those could probably be closing. But intriguing stuff, sir. What do you think of all this just explosion of near-dated upside in Apple?
I know Mark and I saw these contracts, and I can't tell, like, because there's a lot of open interest there. Is somebody closing open interest? I know I wasn't quite sure if Henry, or is this just brand, or is it new opening papers? Kind of hard to tell. But like, price wise, kind of inexpensive, but it also reminds me of those customers that were buying the upside before. And apparently, I guess Apple has no top. Earnings have been declining for a year and a half, but it doesn't seem to matter to anybody because it goes up. As I said, I have no interest in shorting the Qs now or any particular time because the flow is so strong. So and on this particular one, I don't know if they're closing some calls they sold or if they are doubling down and buying more, because all that volume looks kind of suspicious relative to open interest. But even then, it's like, wow, they're freaking out that they might be taken out. So, it did come across the radar, and it is surprising that traders are buying upside. But also what I see with Henry is like vol's getting kind of low in there out to July 21. I know we're waiting for earnings, but all the vols are down to like 1% or less now. So, 16 vol, 1% underlying move, which I have to say, it's just kind of relentlessly going up. So there wouldn't be calls that I would buy, but I wouldn't want to be a seller either. It's one of those options are to be sold or not to be sold. And I think I'd be in the not to be sold category at this particular time.
You're in the not sold Don Schlesinger category. Well, yeah, you're right. Yes. Apple vol has been pretty anemic for a while. I thought it would do much better in our poll a few weeks ago where we asked people, which of these names that are at the bottom of their 52-week vol levels do you want to buy? And everyone picked everything else. Tesla, I think we had S&P in there. Apple came in at the bottom, only somewhere around 7%, I believe. So there was no love for buying vol in Apple. That kind of surprised me. I think Tesla took it on that poll. I guess maybe they're making up for lost time now by just piling into all of this near-dated Apple upside. Intriguing stuff. Are you slinging a little bit of Apple right now, listeners? Near-dated calls, you like these? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know as we keep on rolling into our FLOWMASTER's next name. This is one of the Rock Lobster's favorite. He's always talking about this one on Oddities and other shows. This is Cameco, ticker symbol CCJ. You know them, uranium name based out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Say that 5 times fast, listeners. Ticker symbol CCJ, trading about 30 3/4 up. Let's see, about 3/4 of a buck today, about 2.5%. So a nice little pop for them on the year. Very good year, up about 9 handles exactly, 41.5%. They were trading about 21 3/4 a year ago. They got up to about 30, so almost this level back in September. Then they gave most of it up, got back to about 21 3/4 in December of last year. Then they rallied again, 29.62 in February, then back down again, 24 in March, and then back up again to about 32 bucks just a few weeks ago. It looks like their high was 33 back in about a week and change ago out here. And since then, they've come off a little bit back down to about 30 3/4 where we find them today. Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, what did your eye of the FLOWMASTER, a.k.a. Trade Alert, what did it spot out there in Cameco today, sir?
So I would bet that you saw this one too. This is a nice, clear-cut, aggressive call buyer. So right after 10:21 in the morning, somebody swept 14,000 of the August 35 calls. They paid 42 cents on kind of the first couple hundred, and then they finished the order with a 43-cent top on 13,000 of them. So this is very typical. People use a smart router to maximize the liquidity that's out there across the 16 exchanges that we have, and then they basically cross the rest. They basically negotiate this with the broker. But that's a pretty chunky trade for this name. It is opening because there's no open interest. It's 13 bucks, 13% above the spot price. and it's $600,000 of premium. So, I mean, this is a longer dated trade. It's a 50-day trade. And I did go look at the stock. I mean, it was, I think the all-time high was around $52 back in 2007. And it's up almost 50% this year. So, this is, I don't know what the motivation is, but it does not look to me like it would be one of these stock replacement trades, which we sometimes see if somebody is up a chunk in some stock and, you kind of are starting to get nervous. You have your choice. You can sell the stock. A lot of times they don't really want to do that. For tax reasons, really. You can buy a put, but sometimes people don't like to experience that negative decay. And then sometimes people will sell the stock, but buy calls, and we call that stock replacement. And then you're just limited to the risk is your premium paid. But in this case, it's so far out of the money, I don't think that's what it is. It just looks to me like a kind of a sector-based trade. I saw some headlines on I think Buffett putting some money into an energy name today. So energy's been pretty strong lately, and I don't know. I mean, I guess uranium's got a decent chance to come along with it, but that one stood out just because it was nice and clear cut.
All right. Speaking of clear cut and the FLOWMASTER, let's go back actually and let's pay off a trade that you highlighted back on the May 18th episode. Mr. FLOWMASTER, you were talking about everyone's favorite Liberty Global PLC Class A, another British telecom name. We're always talking about Vodafone on Options Oddities. The Rock Lobster keeps trying to lure me to the dark side of buying those October 11s. I keep saying no, but he keeps trying to pull me back into those. But here's the other side of that. We got Liberty Global here, ticker symbol LBTYA. Trading $16.90 today, off about a dime today. On the year, let's see, a year ago it was trading 22 and a quarter. So they were looking pretty good a year ago. And then they gave a lot of that up. They got down to about 15, it's like about 15 and a quarter, which was also their low for the year. That was back in September of last year. Then they rallied it again, February, about $22 again. And then they crushed it right back down to about 16 and a quarter. And it's been bouncing in this 16 to 17 range pretty much for the better part of this month, all of June. So intriguing stuff out here. And then Mr. FLOWMASTER, back on our May 18th show, you talked about somebody coming in and loading up on some near-dated upside here in Liberty Global, including folks picking up 10,000 of the June 17 halves, paying 55 to 60 cents for those. They also had 10,000 going up the week before for 62 cents. So folks were really piling into those bad boys. A lot of OI piling into that 17 half strike. And, man, they got really close, Mr. FLOWMASTER, but no cigar. The stock closed at 17 and a quarter on expiration. Looks like all these calls were still open. So they didn't really get, I talked about it's kind of been vacillating for the better part of this past month in this 16 to 17 range. So they never really got an opportunity, that big banger, to really get out of these for a lot of money. And looks like they dropped just on the first block, 600 grand. Obviously, if you add in all the other paper, a lot more. So it seems like a bit of an ouchie on this one. Is that your takeaway as well, Mr. FLOWMASTER?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at kind of the longer term history, and this name does have kind of, pretty frequent days where we see between 10 and 20,000 calls trade. So it almost looks to me like somebody kind of keeps reloading. Maybe they're adjusting it. It doesn't look like they're really making any money because you're right. There's a few spikes up, but really the stock's kind of mostly sideways. Sideways and lower since the spring at least. So, but I think that again, people sometimes use options specifically because they like that the risk is capped and what you paid for it. If you're just a straight old long call buyer. So, that's my guess here. I'm looking at kind of some more recent chunks of call buying, even yesterday, and just trying to see kind of what yesterday 10,000 of the October 17 half calls traded $1.14, and those look like an opening buyer too. So those are so it seems to be a little bit of a pattern. That hasn't paid off yet. And maybe if I was going to trade around this, maybe it's an opportunity to sell it in some sort of kind of a covered risk fashion. But I agree, didn't work out for him.
Mr. Rock Lobster, anything to add here on these Vodaphones, and also, or not Vodafone, that's me. Anything you add here on these Liberty Global? B, do you want to explain to the people why you keep trying to make me buy those Vodafone calls in October? And C, I know you like CCJ. Anything you want to add there, sir?
Yes, although I do enjoy the fact that Vodafone just lives rent-free in your head on a weekly basis now.
They mock me. Those AAPL, yes. They mock me.
And I'm curious because I know Henry's more around institutions that, like, let's say you're a fund and you're going to buy 2 million shares of, let's say, Liberty Global, or 1.2 million shares. So instead of doing that, you maybe buy calls a couple times strategically, so you can get a little pop before you buy the stock. Keep the stock, the dollars, segregated. And you buy buy a chunk of options. I do that. Like, okay, so let's say I want to buy a couple hundred shares of stock. I'm like, really don't feel like spending the money on the stock, so I'm just gonna buy like 2 or 4 lot to get the equivalent delta, but not part with so much dough for the stock. And I'm just I would assume that funds do that because. So they blow the 20 cents on the calls, but it's probably worth it if they do it once or twice, 3 times, and they'd make like, wow, okay, a pretty good chunk of change if one of them hits. I think like in my spidey sense is kind of that's what they're doing. They're not really going all in on the stock, but they're buying the calls. As far as Conejo, yes, we've seen that, or Cameco, seen that volume. I like the whole nuclear thing. I think that would solve a zillion global problems, to be quite honest. Technology is so far advanced in that area that this whole green energy thing would be solved in a relatively short amount of time, I think within a 10-year period. But, of course, that would be a solution. But I digress. So, yes, I do like CCJ. I own some shares. I do dabble in the options every once in a while. But at this point, it is kind of a rich value at this point, so I'm not really doing much else. But I do find it interesting. I did see that, like, I'm trying to figure out where the stock goes and how does it get to that kind of value for the 35s that call buyer had. So I'm definitely intrigued by it. And yes, there has been quite a bit of paper in that name over the last couple weeks. Mark and Leash at Option Pit have had a few good trades just kind of piggybacking some of these call buyers. So that's kind of where I am on this current amount of flow.
And where we are, listeners, is heading right on into the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's get to your questions and comments. Also, some of your feedback. Our question of the week this week is an intriguing one. They're all intriguing, I think, but we haven't really touched on this area before. We say everyone wants zero-day options on hot stocks like Apple and Tesla. However, after hours, contrary exercise orders are gumming up the works. It's not clear that both can coexist in the options market. So if you had to choose one, which one would you rather have? Contra exercise orders or your 0 days, Apples and your Teslas, etc.? Let's go out to the uncleist of Mike's, who is hunkering down in his mobile office just under all of the oppressive smoke and fog and haze from the fires out there. Mr. Uncle Mike, if you can take off your respirator for 2 seconds to answer us, sir. Which way are you leaning? Which way do you think our audience is leaning? Do they want the after hours ability to say, I don't want that stuff? Or do they want their 0 day Apple and Tesla, sir?
You're really not exaggerating much. This is really not pleasant. Be glad you're in Florida right now. But with that being said, I think people are going to want freedom, if you will, to say, I don't want this stuff. And whether or not it works, I'm not the floor trader type, so I yield to the floor traders on how that flow would work.
Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you. I haven't had a chance to pick your brain about that. You were down at OIC, so you know the fun that was going on down there. Everyone was debating this issue down there. NASDAQ came out pretty pointedly on one of the panels saying we want zero-day single names. We're willing to make this stuff happen. A lot of people seem to be lining up on the fact that maybe the contra exercise stuff, a bit of an old school bit of the options market. Maybe its time has come. Others say no, it still plays a place. If you're a liquidity provider or someone else, you still need that option, pun intended, to opt out of some of this stuff. So it's an intriguing topic. Where do you fall, sir, and where do you think our audience is falling?
It's definitely interesting. I actually met a guy, I saw a guy at a little presentation last night, and he specializes in trading the 0-day SPY and Qs, and really actually watches the screens until 5 o'clock at night, every night, to know what the contrary exercise instructions to do. And I'm not a fan of the uncertainty of how that goes, because not all customers have access to after hours stock quotes. There's a asymmetry of information, and there's also different different contrary exercise instruction rules for market makers versus non-market makers. Market makers get an extra half hour. So I think it's a big mess, really. I'm not a fan of it, and it is one reason why the SPX is just simpler. And like cash settled index options, everybody knows what the final value is, period. And if you were long it and it's in the money, you made some money, or you have some value there at least. If you're talking about these physically settled things and there's after hours moves and you can't quite tell which ATS to trust in terms of pricing, it's really confusing. And I don't think it's fair to put that on the customer's shoulders. So I would hope that your listeners are just not really a fan of it.
So you're voting for, sounds like you're voting for the 0-day Apple and Tesla stuff and saying the hell with the contra exercise. You think our audience is going that way as well?
Yeah.
Interesting. Mr. Rock Lobster, you get the final vote, sir. Which way are you going? Which way do you think our listeners are going?
I'll go. I agree with Henry. I would go one step further. Like, I don't think 0 DTE works unless it's cash settled, to be quite honest. Like, the whole reason the OEX got messed around was because early exercise and people just getting hosed all the time, having spreads assigned away. Now, I realize that was cash settled American style, which is dead forever, I would assume. But I think in this case, yeah, I think the reason SPX works is because, you have a call that's $10 in the money and it just assigns out. You don't have to close it. It just settles for what it settles for.
Thank you.
So I think if it's going to be successful like we have in SPX, I just say, hey, if you're trading those options, they just have to be cash settled. Now, I do agree that it could be a slight nightmare because people not knowing what's cash settled and what's stock settled. I wouldn't even begin to figure out how to fix that problem. But ultimately, if it's cash settled, you still have the delta until the last possible second. So I don't think people get too hurt by cash settle like that. But that's the only way I think it works. Got to go cash settled on those big names. And but in a year they're going to do it. There's no way you see this SPX volume and that people just don't do that. There's just no way. I think it's got to happen. But I know Henry has better insight in this, but I would bet it happens sooner rather than later.
You have the same vote as your work wife there, Mr. Meatball, about the cash settle. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a good solution either way. Either we need to get rid of contra exercises, people are going to be unhappy about that, or we need to launch another new product to get another new product off the ground, which is cash settled equity options. And then I could just see the emails coming into us now and the tweets. Wait a minute, I sold puts in Apple. I thought I was getting the stock, but no, I got this cash settled thing. What the hell's going on? That's going to be a whole other ball of wax as well. So I don't look forward to that day. You may be right. That may be the way things end up going. Right now, our audience is firmly in the camp of give us the 0-day Apple, Give us the 0-day Tesla. They want the 78.6%. They want it. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Only 21.4% saying they want to keep the after-hours Contra exercise. That's probably a lot of the pros in our audience floating around making that vote. So intriguing stuff out there. You got about a day left. If you're listening on the podcast, you can still vote, listeners, as we keep on going into our final segment and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our next episode. And let's go out to the Unklest of Mikes first. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until our next episode next week, sir?
I'm keeping an eye on 4th of July. I mean, there's not a lot happening. With your family, celebrate America.
So you're keeping an eye on hot dogs and burgers and hitting the pool and just having a good old summertime celebration.
Yes, sir. That's what you should be doing. This is America, by gosh.
Sounds like you were munching on a burger earlier as well. So you're getting a jump start on that 4th of July celebration already, I see.
Happy 4th to me.
Happy 4th to you. You're celebrating being the latest star on YouTube. I get it. Mr. FLOWMASTER, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until our next episode, at least for you, next week?
Well, I agree. 4th of July is time to have some fun. We might, blow a few things up. Not in the city, upstate. I am getting ready for financial earnings right after the 4th of July, so or it's the week following. But we'll get back into earnings season. We had the stress tests on the banks this week, which I think they all passed, so we got a little bounce there. And then playing with a lot of the new data sets you can get on Data Shop at CBOE. There's one called the Equity Short Report, which is new, and basically, it's funny. I usually kind of know at least how to look at most of the data I find. This one's an interesting one. I'm trying to find where it really fits in the informational universe. So it basically shows you the volume of equity trades, not an option report. It's an equity data set. The share of equity sales on CBOE exchanges that are short sellers. So it kind of adds to that, when we're out there looking for short squeezes and kind of, deviations from some sort of baseline, it's another set to experiment with. So that's what I've been playing with lately.
And I say blowing stuff up. You already did that. You're already blowing stuff up in your office building there and scaring the hell out of ladies on the escalator. So you're already both of you and Uncle Mike, getting a jump start on the 4th of July. Mr. Rock Lobster, I should say, same question for you, sir. How are you getting a jump start on all things 4th of July up there?
Oh, geez, I don't even know where I'm going to be. I might be traveling back and forth to the Cape or picking up a truck. So, because we thought the weather was going to be so bad, we didn't even have a 4th of July party this year. So I don't know what I'm doing for the 4th of July. I might just take a stay vacation and, finish working on my paddleboard. Maybe play some golf. As far as trade goes, we could get a surprise between today and tomorrow. I thought we would have a little more aggressive window dressing into this, probably, I'm not going to say historic half year, but pretty darn close. So everybody keeps forgetting that, like, this is a 35% in the Q is not nothing historically. It's probably it's not the first, it's got to be the second biggest first half for the Q in, 20 years or something. So, I thought we'd get a little bit more action around that. But it looks like a little bit of tiredness, maybe except for Apple.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And then we'll see if this 13 handle holds up through tomorrow. At least for today, it looks like it might.
And that's about it for the show today as well, listeners. Before we go, let's go back around the horn really quickly. Let's start with you, Mr. Rock Lobster, sir. If folks want to check out all of your good goodies, where should they go? What should they do?
Yes, the good goodies, customer care team, 888-TRADE-01. Somebody will be happy to help you there. You get 10% off. If you say you listen to the show, just say, Andrew gave me 10% off. Or weekly profit cycles at Money Map Press, where you trade while you're doing it's doing really phenomenally well over there. So pretty happy about that. Either place, And check it out, optionpit.com or moneymappress.com for all that stuff. Weekly profit cycles over there.
All right, and let's go out to the unclest of Mike. Same question for you. So I'm getting distracted by the meatball sending me all this good stuff about the pools in St. Charles. So are you heading out to the pool in St. Charles, sir?
I should be. I'm going to stay on my screen for a little bit longer, but then might be out on the river later today. We'll see. But yeah, if you want to find out more about the YouTube video that's sweeping the world, just type in St. Charles Wealth Management. Call spreads, an alternative to covered call on YouTube, and you will see it. Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW, or check out my website, stcharleswealth.com.
And last but not least, Mr. Flowmaster, sir. A little birdie tells me you guys have a cool new newsletter that folks can sign up for to get their hands on some intriguing free data, sir.
We do, but now I don't remember what the link is. Thanks for mentioning it.
Let me see if I can dig it up while you're talking.
Somewhere on the CBOE.com site, there is a link to sign up for our end-of-day market recap, which is trade alert data. Basically gives you a nice little synopsis of what happened and where the activity was. And we're very proud of that. I just don't remember what the link is. And you can always find us at CBOE.com/RMA, which is Risk and Market Analytics, which is all of the cool data and platforms that we have. So head over there, and next show I will make sure I have the link for the activity.
Yeah, I'm looking at the link right now, but it is not pronounceable by human tongue. So we'll get a shortened URL for the folks out there. Check it out, listeners. You are going to want it. We always talk about this stuff here on the show. This is a great way for you guys to get a taste of everything that we're talking about. The Flowmaster will come armed with the URL for you next week. In the meantime, you know where to go. CBOE.com, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fire. That's going to do it for us today on the Old OB. Don't worry if you need more in your lives. Maybe you're hunkering down in Chicago. You can't go outside. You need a little bit of content to keep you engaged. We'll be back in a little bit with all things futures options. Back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for Volatility Views. After that, for options oddities for all you pro folks. And then back again next week, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.